To the Stockbridge Board of Assessors on Monday, October the 21st. Doug and I are here. Is Brandy not going to be here?
No, she has an extended stay on her vacation.
Oh, okay.
She's not here tonight.
So, good morning, everyone.
And Tammy's out sick. Good morning. Okay, you got to review or approve the last meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the last meeting minute.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, number two, just a reminder, Wednesday is the meeting in Williamstown. Gary, are you still going?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think I'll double check, but it starts at 8:30 is registration.
Yeah, I'll go up and stay over.
It should be, I mean, we didn't, I think there's gonna be close to 50 people. We were hoping for more.
Yeah, really.
I know, it's our 100th,
I know.
year. But I don't know. I guess people just don't have the money in their budgets for it. So Brandy will be there, Gary, myself and Tammy, and it should be good. Okay, number three, at our last meeting, we talked about the status of the valuation forms that need to be done on Gateway. The LA3, which is the sales analysis, LA4, which is our totals report, LA13, which is the new growth, and LA15, which is the status report for the sales that were submitted. Those were all approved by DOR. So valuation side is done. So now we're on the tax rate side of it, which all the department heads are working to get. Actually, we already have all the data for the tax rate in place because, we have the classification coming up. It's all in there. I don't believe we have our balance sheet done yet, which isn't, us, but it is the accounting side of it. So hopefully Erica gave me an update and they were working on it on Friday because there is an accounting firm that's, handling the particulars for the accounting side of it. And they may have it done this week, which would be great because we wouldn't have to do that in lieu of balance sheet as part of the Gateway process. And so we'll see, but everything else, every single form other than the LA5, which is the end result of the classification hearing, and the tax rate recap have not been submitted, but everything else, all the supporting documents are in there signed, and we can't change anything at this moment unless the DOR finds a mistake or has an issue with something. And as I mentioned before, Jim Podolik, who used to do our sign off on the tax rates and review,
Right.
He's retired. So we do have a new person assigned to us temporarily, I believe just for fiscal year 25. And I talked to Joe Barberi last week. He had an issue about another town that I was helping him with. And he said that this person that is helping us out has been with the Division of Local Services for at least 10 years. So they're really good. So, I mean, because we got to know Jim Podolik I've worked with them for over 20 years.
Yeah.
And you pretty much know what they're going to ask for and what they're going to look for when you submit your tax rate. So there might be a little learning curve with this new person, but they're there to help us. I mean, it is Division of Local Services and they'll do what they can do to get our tax rate set. There was a change on number 4 when you did review the overlay. We had mentioned to put $25,000 in.
Yeah.
And I tried that, but there's a macro in place on Gateway for the recap sheet where because of the rounding and the pennies involved in the tax rate, it will adjust the overlay amount to balance the recap sheet. That's where it always goes. And it ended up bringing the 25 down to 22. No matter what I did, so I took the suggestion from the Gateway, which was to balance it out with the rounding to bring the overlay up to 37,000. So that's what we're going to put in this year, which only adjusted the tax rate by a penny, if that, with the rounding. So I just wanted to give you an update because you did vote on the 25,000, but it ended up being at least more instead of less. It didn't really change the outcome that much. Number 5, basically, I just mentioned everything that we have in place. What will be required after the classification hearing literally the next day or that, during that next week will be for you guys to sign off on the recap sheet online. And then we wait for all the questions. My job is to filter who's ever got issues. Well, whoever is helping us, I can't remember his name, but I'll find out. Filter the questions to the departments that have to answer the questions on the supporting documents. I don't think it's going to be that much of a problem, but then again, you're dealing with the Department of Revenue, a new person, it could be. Any issues on that? I mean, any questions on all of that? I did want to mention I don't know if I brought the folder with me. To get back, just to bounce back to number 3, I don't know if I mentioned it at our last meeting, but the new growth final number was just shy of 11 million for our construction. And it resulted in about a $75,000 increase or additional amount of taxes that we can raise on top of the 2.5% that we are allowed to raise. It's lower than last year, but I think at the last meeting I mentioned that there's a lot of under construction properties that we'll be revisiting next year. So next year's will pick up probably more than it did this year, but that's still a good number for Stockbridge. Okay, number 6, the last couple of years, you guys have met before the classification hearing, and this worked out perfectly because the classification hearing is scheduled for next Monday, the 28th, 6:30, right? Is it 6:30? 6:30. I actually have all of the packet of information that I send to you guys. Typically, I send it to Mike. He's not here today, so I didn't know that. So I was hoping he would just quickly review it and then send the PDF off to the select board. I can still get it to him today. I mean, I have it right here. It's done. And I think he also puts it on the website.
Can I get a copy there?
Yeah, I'll send it to you directly. I do have it ready to go. Again, we're not here on Wednesday, so I wanted to make sure that this got out in time. What's not on there, and typically we won't put that on the paperwork for the classification hearing from the Board of Assessors, are any recommendations that you have for.
So
for that.
when is the classification hearing, just again?
It's Monday.
Monday, the 28th.
28th at
Okay.
6:30.
Okay.
And there is a revision on how the state handles the posting of that. We no longer have to post that as a legal ad in the Berkshire Eagle, as long as it is timely posted for a regular select board meeting. We're within 48 hours of us having our valuation set. Well, our valuations were set last week. So as long as that, I don't know if the agenda's been posted yet, but I would imagine that's probably just going to be the only thing on that for that night too. I mean, it doesn't matter if it isn't, but typically we have it at the select board's meeting, but we are coming up to the end of October and we want to get the classification in as fast as we can. So I know we had mentioned this before. Did you still want to do your recommendations for the classification hearing? And typically I'll send a memo out. I did it last year. I don't remember if I did it the year before. You've only done this the last 2 years, because what I used to do is include I used to include it in the classification packet, but I felt, and Mike also felt, that it's something best to keep out of that document and do it at your meeting as a separate memo to the Board of Selectmen. So I'll just go over again, this isn't the classification hearing, but I just wanted to quickly go over what the 3 things are at the classification hearing. So the first main reason is you're there to declare a residential factor. Residential factor, if you decide that, if the select board decides to keep a single tax rate, which we've had historically for many, many, many years and decades, you vote a residential factor of 1. That gets reported to the DOR. That does not shift the burden over to the commercial, industrial, and personal property class. That is typically what we have recommended. And do you want me to just go over all these and then you guys?
Yeah, I think you should
Talk-
describe it in
All right.
detail, and then we can maybe make a comment or two why we feel a certain way.
All right, that's fine. So typically, and I'm just gonna read from my first page of, again, the classification. It's not the classification hearing itself, but what the selectmen decide. I mean, typically they can vote up to 150% shift to the commercial and industrial and personal property. And I always come forward because we have the breakdown of the class percentages, residential being, 90%, and then how much sits in the rest of the classes. And because we're literally at like a 10% at this point for the commercial, industrial, and personal property, it's such a small percentage to shift that over. So I typically write that up that it's not the best thing for Stockbridge, being a small community that we are, and typically because we've never had a split in the tax rate. So that's basically it. I mean, we will include a schedule in the packet for people to look at that will show what if you shifted it, 1%, 2%, all the way up to what the state allows. And then it shows the residential tax rate and what the commercial tax rate would be. That's included in the documentation, so you can look at that.
So, and Michael, general question. So you mentioned 10% is commercial. Does that 10% commercial also include all of the nonprofits? I have.
No.
Okay.
No, nonprofits are not part of the classification hearing at all.
No, but it's not in that number though.
No.
Okay.
Mhm. No, this is strictly,
I'm a little-
this
I'm a
is
little-
strictly taxable property.
Because I'm a little surprised that 10%, it's even that high, to tell you the truth.
It's just making it to that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, commercial is 4.698, industrial is 0.48, and personal property is 4.04. Yeah, residential is 90.7693. And again, 10 years from now, it's probably still gonna be the same.
Yeah, and
I mean,
and I think
it doesn't change that much.
And I think probably what's driving a lot of that commercial is going to be our cell towers. It's going to be our infrastructure with the telephones and the Tennessee pipeline. So I have a feeling.
That's all personal property.
Yeah, so again, I mean, I don't think that the Stockbridge community has a vibrant commercial tax base
It really doesn't.
and
And again, it's not something that would happen overnight if that were to be the decision to be made. I mean, this would be new construction, anything that we're adding. The utility valuations, the ones that are, like the 504s that you get an appraisal for, they're all part of the personal property. Personal property is all the second homeowners that we pick up for their personal property furnishings. It's the utility values for the cell phone companies. It's the businesses, which again, we're not picking a huge percentage up on that. It's really the utilities valuations. Tennessee Gas, Mass Electric are the biggest ones that we have. That's personal property. Industrial, you have the Donovan's, that's much it. There's not a lot in the industrial. And the commercial also includes the mixed use properties, on the main street that might have an apartment above. Yep.
so and going back, we've never had a split factor for commercial versus personal. It's always been this.
John Miller always used to say there was one year that I think it was back when Prop 2.5, 1981, way before my time. I mean, I was a mere baby at that point, starting, this stock started in 88. So no, not in Stockbridge. I mean, again, it just isn't the type of community where, you shift the tax rate to commercial and you're really going to be hindering the small base that we have. And I don't know. I mean, again, we can get into more of that at the classification hearing itself, but it really is going to be the same argument. I mean, I'm going to present the same thing that these percentages are not changing dramatically over the years where we're allowing commercial development, or even if you could allow commercial development, where is the land for it? And again, I don't know if affordable housing is going to come into that. That's a whole nother issue. And again, is that a commercial entity? Is that a residential entity? I mean, that's something that would be fairly new to us here. You know, if that was we would really have to figure out the use codes and have the state help us with something like that.
Yeah,
I have a question. One of the questions I have is and I know we're only talking about a couple of points, but you know, for an average tax bill of $5,000, a couple of points, this is $100, $200. For some people, it matters. You know, my sense is that the commercial class has been flat in terms of assessed values. And obviously that's not the case in the residential class. I'm wondering if over time we're seeing, because what I've noticed, I believe, is an actual reduction in some of the commercial tax bills because of if they remain flat over a number of years and the residential, you know, assessments go up, you end up seeing an effective shift from commercial to residential in terms of the actual out-of-pocket payments that residential payers pay. And I don't know that we have time to deal with that this year, but I think it's reasonable to study whether or not, you know, I don't think that our big commercial customers need a tax break at the expense in terms of actual out-of-pocket payments. That is the net effect of having assessments rise greatly. Obviously, just because assessments going up within the.
Our valuations did go up on the commercial class this year and last year.
But going back to what you're sort of saying that the residential people have had great appreciations
Right.
of their homes over the years and the commercial has not,
That's right.
which is sad.
But it's resulted in an effective tax cut for the commercial class.
It's not really a tax cut. It's just they haven't seen a growth in their values.
Well, plus
So-
the fact is, we can't really adjust the base where there's no sales. We still have to relate this all back to our job in this office is to evaluate sales on every class of property. If there is not, the state is not going to allow us to just arbitrarily increase something over a percentage without proof that our market can support that. We just don't have one. We had 3 commercial sales, which for us is huge. We adjusted the office spaces. We adjusted the storefront valuations based on those 3 sales. Next year, we could have 0 sales.
But the point I'm making is
So we
just
still have to be aware of that.
regardless of value. I mean, most businesses don't want to sell and most residents don't want to sell. And what we're doing is we're basically seeing kind of an effective shift quietly. Maybe it's only a quarter or half a point a year, but if over 5-10 years, this is a trend we see, we're effectively, you know, minimizing the expense to the commercial class. It's something I think to think.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say is it appears if we look at the neighboring towns of Great Barrington and Lenox, we're seeing a vibrant growth in commercial zones and businesses. And here in Stockbridge, we seem pretty stagnant and I don't see a lot of vibrant.
Only make so much money selling tourism related stuff.
Yeah, but they're all nonprofits. They're not in the number that we're talking about. I mean, we're not talking about the nonprofits. We're not talking about Austin Riggs. We're not talking about Tanglewood or Norman Rockwell Bees. We're talking about the small businesses that are trying to survive in Stockbridge. And when you start backing out all of our nonprofits, I don't know who's left. You know, you got the Red Lion Inn.
You would know better than me, Doug. Do the small businesses own the properties they're in and mostly rent them?
Mostly rent
They
them.
mostly rent them at this point. And
Yeah.
we rent space at the Waldorf School up on Pine Street.
Right.
And I don't get a break. If you guys give my landlord a break, I don't get it.
Well, and that's what we're going to talk about when we get to the third point here that we're going to vote on.
Yeah.
But going back to the split tax rate or giving a different factor for commercial, I don't think that I don't think we have a vibrant community in the commercial factor here. And that's why I am not
All right. I'm not only asking.
changing the factor. So, I mean, I'll be
I'm only
voting.
asking. I'm not advocating.
Yeah, yeah.
I just, you know, some.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm going to be voting for not changing the factor and leaving it as one. You know, if this was done in a more thoughtful process over a longer period of time, I might change my
All right.
feeling.
Maybe in the next year, can we like take a look at that and just sort of see if it's a long-term trend? That's all. I like to have the data and I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and I can send you out the
and my other question.
10-year list of the sales that we've had. So
I'm not a big fan of the personal property tax as it relates to seasonal residents. I am, however, a big fan of the other part, which is like, you know, we can get Tenneco and the cell tower companies to pay a little more. I'm all for it. And I guess the question I have for you is out of that 4% for the personal property tax, what percentage of that is actually the seasonal residents who are reporting something of what the value is in their home?
I don't know that offhand, but I could find out. But I can
Me,
say
like-
that the majority of that valuation is from the utility companies. Utility companies are our biggest personal property, not only personal property valuations, but our, Mass Electric and the
Verizon.
well, yeah, I mean, when we come up with the valuations for the cell, we don't take what they give us. I mean, we do an actual spreadsheet. We come up with our values. They never match the low values that they bring in. So we are bringing those up higher. But the gas pipeline, those are set by the DOR. There is a process of questioning it, but again, they're set by the DOR.
Right.
Those are still our highest
Right.
taxpayers, I mean, even in the whole, the whole, it's everything.
The point I'm making is if a penny out of that 4%, if a penny out of the dollar is on, I see Patty's on the call. If a penny of that dollar of the overall tax burden is on the second homeowners, that's not something I'm interested in getting more out of. But on the other hand, 3 cents, when you talk about, once again, factors, that's sort of a significant. I'd much rather see those big companies pay the taxes than the residents, and so as we look at kind of over time, once again, that might be something to take a look at too.
Okay.
Yep.
So I make a recommendation that we keep the factor to be the standard 1.0 that we have used
Well,
historically.
we'll maybe let Mike finish and then we'll do all three? Well, no, we didn't do the first one, right?
Well,
That was
the first one.
Okay.
So I think we should do it one at a time because
Yeah,
otherwise.
I mean, I'm presenting it the way that I'll present it at the.
Right.
next, 'cause-
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I make a motion that I suggest that the assessors suggest a factor of
Oh,
1.0.
one, yeah, and I agree. So I'll vote yes.
And what are we gonna do with Brandy? Are we gonna give her the option to?
She did.
Review the,
I don't know how that works, but I talked to her this morning and her viewpoint was keeping it at one and keeping no on the other two. But I don't know how that works when she's not present.
yeah, her vote probably is not official.
Right.
So maybe what we can do.
We'll
is
just
as a
leave the vote
footnote.
as the two of us. And we could just put a mention that she agreed from afar.
Yeah, we just,
I mean, it's majority.
Yeah.
So, all right, so the keeping a residential factor of 1. The second is the residential tax exemption. And again, when I present the packet to the board, I usually do what a 20% outcome would be, because you can go up to 35% on this at the moment.
Right.
They are talking about a 50% shift, but you can't even go into the state's website. There's nothing's been changed on that. I don't think it's official yet.
We have to accept our seasonal community designation to get up to 50%.
And I think that's
It's a
in,
town meeting vote.
okay. So I'm not changing anything that I've done over the years. I gave an example of what 20% would do, and then I went as high as the maximum, which is 35%. And again, without getting into a classification hearing just about this, because it is a hot topic, the Tammy and I went through and again, we've talked about this before, but the vetting process for something like this is in a town where there's no rural delivery. Mike and I have talked about this. The only way to really do it is, for the first year at least, is just go through the voters rolls, because we don't really have any other tools. You can't really go through the entire assessor's list, tax list, and look at the PO boxes and say, oh, that's one. Because some of those are in LLCs, some of those are in trusts. We can't find them on the street listing for the voters rolls when it's an LLC. We don't know who's involved with those.
But to make it clear
It's
though,
just not easy.
somebody has to
That way.
apply for this type of exemption. So
Yep.
theoretically, if 50% qualified and only 25% applied, we'd only be talking about a 25%. So we don't really know, even if we tried to forecast how many people would be eligible, we don't know how many people would apply for it.
Right.
Correct?
It isn't,
So-
I don't know if it's clear enough. This is an application process. Even if it is voted through, you still have to apply for this. And we don't have an example of even what the application looks like because there's so few towns that have it. We can find out. But we still need something that we can present to the select board as a, this is the number. I'll just say it now. I mean, we came up with 662 parcels that we feel would be eligible for that. But again, that includes, we decided that maybe the best way is just to go high instead of low. So we added in those PO boxes just as a fail safe. There weren't a ton of them. Last year we projected 660, so it's not that different.
In Boston, they apply it all to the latter bill in the year. So they make people apply and everybody pays as if there were no residential exemption. And then the ones who are approved by the Board of Assessors then get a credit on their second tax bill.
But the only thing with that is, because we're required to submit all of our data on Gateway, I did some digging around and an approval, even on the first year of a residential exemption, requires a list to be certified and submitted to the state of which they will then question whether or not they are certifiable or not. And I don't even know that process. This is something that would be manually put in. So if we know there's 662 parcels, we're going to use that list to manually put in a spreadsheet and upload it to the Gateway. We did not I guess that's something that once you do it and you get out of that first year, the second year obviously is not that hard to do because you're working off of a list. It would be a matter of take this one out, add this one in. It's a process. It's going to, it's a job. There's no doubt about it. And again, I don't want to get into too much of that because we can go over that that's where we should be going over at the classification. But I did want to say that we did make an effort to come up with an idea of how many, because there's no way of doing a classification hearing with a recommendation or non-recommendation without knowing how much the average residential valuation is, how much would come off of each parcel, and then how many parcels multiplied by the exemption amount are being shifted around in the tax levy. And I just want to make it really clear, and I'll make it really clear at the classification hearing, this is not taking money out of your levy. This is taking the amount of money that is being raised with the tax rate that we're proposing and shifting it within the classes.
Right.
This isn't, we're going to.
It's a redistribution
It is
of a tax base.
Of the levy. Yes, a major redistribution of valuation.
662, the number that you've come up with as your estimate?
Yes.
And how many parcels are there? How many homes are there?
We have, this is where it gets a little weird. And I'm using that word because it is weird. The DOR on their calculation requires you to come up with the average residential value. That is not the average single family value. They're two different numbers. The resident, and you cannot even try to put in a different number because they're using the LA4, of which we already had approved with our valuation totals. So and I'll throw this out there, the classification is only a week away. The way we calculated it is the total residential parcel count is 1,698. That is not the number of single family homes we have. We have roughly around 1,200, give or take. And those include the condos too. But the way the residential exemption is calculated, it is the average residential value based on your total class. That's going to be around 724,000. That would be at 20. Here I am getting into the whole thing again, but why not? That would be the amount under 20%. The amount under 35% is, let's see. Oh, this is the wrong one I brought with me. I don't have that number, but I'll have it ready for this. It's higher. So when everything is said and done, if you multiply the 20% by the average residential value to come up with the exemption amount. So let's just use 20%. That would be around 145,000 that comes off of every one of those 662 parcels. And again, your first year, you really don't have any applications. You're just going in on, because the way this is set up, which is a ridiculous way that it's set up, is and Mike and I have discussed this, the residential exemption should be voted in at a classification hearing and implemented the next year. That is not how it works. And we're a semi-annual community. In your first year, if it gets voted in, you implement it that year one way or another. The state's not going to care how you do it, or they may. I don't know. We haven't had that conversation.
When you say that year, you're really talking about the tax bills historically go out within 30 to 45 days after classification hearing?
Oh, God, no, wait, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Or a
Okay,
week.
2 weeks.
We're late this year,
Yeah.
so we have to get them out.
So there's not, and then just circling back on the 20% of the 724, creating the exemption of 145. The 145 is on all of those 662 parcels. It's not 20% of whatever it estimated is. So if you happen to have a house, if your house happens to be, say, 400,000, or we'll make it easy, we'll make it at 290, theoretically, that person's going to get a 50% exemption.
Well, there is a fail-safe in place that you can't go below what but I believe it's 10% of, yeah. So I mean, so we would have to run a spreadsheet, look at run it by high to low value. And so this 662 could change
So just,
based on the valuation before the exemption.
so what's the fail safe for somebody that has a house assessed for 290,000? What was the most they would get off? So if they were 290 and they were supposedly going to get a reduction of 145, you're saying that's not going to happen. They're not going to get a 50% reduction.
I'm not sure. I'd have to look.
10%, so they can't get a reduction to lower than 29.
Right.
They can only get a 10% is the maximum deduction.
Yeah.
They have to,
That's how it is on the commercial exemption too.
they can't get more than 90%.
Okay. More than a 10% reduction.
No, the reduction can't go beyond 90%. So the value of their taxes has to be
90%.
90%.
Yes.
So this person in my
Everybody has to pay some tax.
so in my scenario, this person would get a reduction of 50%.
Right, but the rate's going to go up. So the actual reduction in their bill would be a little bit less than that. Because the tax rate's going to go up if they.
Correct.
Right. That's a whole nother aspect.
That's
Of this is, and I will, and I don't want to get into those right now, but I will present when you're shifting around that amount of valuation, it has to be made up somewhere, and it's made up with the increase in the tax rate for those that aren't eligible. Well, I'm sorry, I take that back. It's for everybody. So even if you get the exemption, you're still going to be paying on a higher tax rate.
right. So in theory, 145,000 times 662 parcels is going to be removed from the total assessment available to spread the tax.
Right. Well, yes. And I mean, it's not a big secret. I mean, this is going to be publicized, but we are looking at a tax rate of $7.09.
If it goes through or without.
Yeah. If we were to submit right now, to the DOR in the gateway, 709 is what's there. That can change based on
And at 20%.
if they have any, well, the 709 is what it is without any other things voted in. We're going from 737 to 709. I usually present with the 20% calculation and the 35% calculation, what the tax rate would be and where it would go from there. Because that's going to be for everybody. It's not, so if you look at the impact of something like this, at the highest end would be those that don't get it, which would be renters and second homeowners. Renting is a whole nother issue that we would have to figure out as well, because that 662 parcels, if they apply and they indicate to us that they rent that property, we've got to figure out a threshold of how many months they're renting it to be eligible for something like this or not be eligible. They could be kicked out of that list too. There's so many factors that have to be nailed down on something like this. That's why I wish we had more time. I don't get how the state handles this and why they think this is the best solution instead of voting it and then dealing with it the next year, because you can then vet people. Because something like this, let's say a residential exemption was voted through, the procedure every year is going to be, we have to send applications out to every single taxpayer that there is, not just the ones that we think should get it and shouldn't be getting it. All the second homeowners would have to apply as well. And it would be up to them, using our guidelines, to get that back to us within a reasonable amount of time. And we would have to give a date that is, this is the date, and you can't go beyond that date, because you then have to, we would have to vet as a town, all of those applicants, have a number ready to submit to the DOR, because the DOR will not approve a tax rate unless that spreadsheet with all the numbers are there. Because what this does is it affects your tax rate. They're setting the tax rate after our values are set. We're done with valuations now. I mean, the DOR has already certified those. They're now waiting for us to submit our tax rate based on all of these factors. Well, the residential exemption doesn't happen after the tax rate is set. It happens before the tax rate is set. So whatever we do to get to that tax rate is now, would now be part of it. Obviously the 35% is going to be a higher amount. I thought I had that number with me, but I'll find it. And so, yeah, again, there's no way the tax rate is going to decrease on something like this. In this case, using the, I have the 20%. Using the 20%, the tax rate for everyone on the residential side would be $7.69, which is higher than the tax rate that we have now.
Do you know what the total assessment we would lose? So like, I guess it would be 662 times 145.
About 10.
We would lose, the amount that would be exempt would be, okay, this is, I think I have that in here. Again, I usually present this at the,
Around 10 million.
It's around,
no, it's more than that. I don't have that exact number, but it's the DOR's website that prints it out for me. I'll have that number.
we all agree it would be around 662 times 145,000.
Right.
This
That's
would be 96 million.
95, here it is, 95,749,694.
96 million.
You're not really losing it, it's just
Well,
going.
you're exempting it from. the
Yes, you are
calculation. You're
exempting it.
from the calculation.
Rates going up from 7 to 9.
Right, you're right, you are exempting it.
Right. So,
Yep.
and again, when we're talking about, we just got it 11 million of new growth this year. And basically, we're giving up about 9, 10 years of new growth for this exemption. So, yeah, it's a
I
significant.
mean,
that's
there's
that's
a
at the-
lot that goes into this. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just it's not an easy thing. I mean, it's a very controversial topic. And again, it's whatever you guys want to get into, I can answer, but it's,
Yeah, I mean, so that my biggest.
or try to answer.
Yeah, my biggest concern about this whole subject is that I think that we should try to do things in a very thoughtful and knowledgeable way. And I think if this is something that the town would like to entertain, I think it should be fully talked about over an extended period of time at town meetings, at secondary homeowner meetings, at, and we shouldn't have any surprises. And it really would concern me if the selectmen did vote for this now, that we don't really know the full consequences. And so I think, like Michael, you said, that we shouldn't be voting on something, or the selectmen shouldn't be voting on something unless they are 100% knowledgeable about what the true effects are going to be for the entire town. So that's why I am not comfortable, and I suggest that the selectmen hold off on this if they are really considering this. I think this should be a project that might take a year's worth of, research to figure out how it's going to affect everybody. And so I vote that we should not endorse a secondary homeowner or
And
whatever.
I agree with Doug.
Are you accepting comment before you vote?
Go ahead.
Um,
We already voted, but.
Michael had an interesting statistic the other day, which was that, when we both started about the same time, and the myriad tricks have gone into keeping the actual amount that we raise and appropriate. The year that we started, it was 9 million, and he had a number of 9.2 million, some aspect of this. Maybe it's the residential portion of what we raise and appropriate. In 5 years, only 9 million to 9.2 million. That happened through consolidation of town hall employees and roles. It happened by raising the occupancy tax from 4 to 6%. There were so many tricks we pulled out of the trick to kind of keep that rate low. But we know in the high school, with the Glendale Bridge, with the new fire station, we don't have any more tricks in that bag. And you look at what some of the surrounding towns face, where the tax burden is already a couple $1,000s more than ours. And you look at what the impact, just the school impact on our communities is $1,500, $2,000 for the average taxpayer. We don't have, my concern, and this is obviously a challenging decision, is just that as you look in the long term of what we're going to have to raise and appropriate, we're starting to have to choose between things like, do we want to have a school in our community versus do we want to kind of maintain some semblance of affordability, as some of our surrounding towns are going to be pushing a $10,000 average burden, and we're going to be moving up right in the same way in lockstep if the voters decide to support those measures. I don't have any more tricks in my book. With the Affordable Homes Act, they've laid out a bunch of ways for us to keep our communities well-rounded. They've said on small size lots, we can build housing, but only for full-time residents. They're saying we can approve ways to build smaller houses that get around traditional zoning restrictions. They've said that we can preference in things like affordable housing, a subsidy for municipal employees. So we can go back to the days when Homer Meade and, John Biacco and Jack Spencer and all the people, Chief Oppenheim, were all able to live in the same community that they worked in. That is not really the case anymore. We were able to do all these things, and they laid out a toolkit. And one of those things in that toolkit, like it or not, is they're recommending in these seasonal communities that we not only look at the residential exemption, but we double down on it, going from 35 to 50%. The governor's recommending that. The legislature has passed that. That passed out August 1st. I don't know what the right answer is here, but my perception 5 years into this job is we've been talking about what these challenges are for 5 years. And there's been every year a year for compromise. You say start at 20%. I believe legally you can start at 10%. Between 10% and what the state's now saying we can do as a seasonal community at 50%, there's a lot of room for compromise there. And frankly, from my personal perspective, is we haven't seen any compromise on this issue. We've seen basically,
I think it's because it's such a controversial.
Yeah, but one thing I'll say, Patrick, you make a good point, but you're making assumptions. So I would say keep your powder dry and use your silver bullet when you need it. Why would we why would we take this big change now when we don't necessarily need it now? If the school got approved.
School's going to get voted on next October.
Yeah.
And I don't think that the towns I don't think that there's the political will to add $130 million to the 3-town tax base unless we figure out how we're going to keep the towns affordable for the taxpayer.
Right, but I think that's what Doug is
That's what
trying
I'm
to
saying.
say, is we don't know
Use it when
what
you
the
need it.
vote's
Tax
gonna be.
classification hearing between this November and next October.
So the only thing is that I think Stockbridge and West Stockbridge were the only 2 towns that actually voted for the school last time. So, I mean, I think we know that the town has a history of doing what's right and supporting the school. But at the same time, let's take the savings when we need the savings. Let's not do a shift of the tax burden to other people until it becomes a real problem for the townspeople. Because I think what you're going to do is we're going to use this silver bullet, and then when we really need it a year or 2 down the road, it's not going to be available. I mean, so that's why. So I'm not necessarily saying that this is a definite no. I'm just sort of saying that I think this
Right.
needs to be done in a more thoughtful way, in a slower way, and it should be done when we need to have it done. I think, that the town does a great job. I think we paid off our OPEB deficit.
88%.
What's that?
We're at about 88%.
88%. I mean, I think all of that stuff is good. But hopefully some of these things will get paid off when some of these other issues arise. And
That's how we're going to do the fire station. Michael and I already worked it out. We basically are looking at when the debt falls off in 2032 or 2033 and using some of the GE money to fund that 5 years of overlap between the new EMS fire and then have basically the payment for that and the payment for the schools, for the middle school and the lower school, basically it's a way to smooth. We're all in on keeping people's, prediction of what their tax bill is as close as it can be. And a lot of work goes into that. This is, he does a really good job, and I have a ton of, we're working on all these factors, but there's just more coming down the pipe. We know it.
Right. There's more coming down the pipe. And that's what my point is that, I think we need time to really do a professional investigation of how this is going to affect everybody.
Every year I come in and give this little speech. Every year it gets voted down. I'm just asking them, when is the time?
Well, the thing is,
And what is that process?
Fairly controversial. This isn't something that you just, decide. I mean, statistically, it is not something that's widely likable. And
It's part of that because of all the difficulty in implementing that you just laid out. I mean, this is a.
Well, no, it's not just that. It's, you're dealing with, 662 people that may get it. What about the other people that don't? This is an issue where, and again, I'm not taking an opinion on this. I'm just stating the facts. This is not something that is just, we're just going to snap our fingers and everyone's going to agree with this. This is something that takes a lot of thought and effort.
I mean, it's just going back to my other question. This has never been implemented in Stockbridge.
This has never been implemented on this side of the state. I mean, you can just fluff that away and say that means nothing. Well, I do think it means something. This is something that, you speak to every assessor, you see the groups that come in that are trying to think of ways that the residential exemption is going to pay for things. I don't believe that is the way it was set up for. So again,
try to maintain affordability in seasonal communities. It was set up for the Cape. Who's adopted it? Someplace on the Cape and the big, urban areas in Boston.
but you're also talking about, using a school as an excuse, to get this, but at the same time, second homeowners don't have children that are going to the schools.
Taxes are not a la carte. I don't have any kids and I pay for the schools, and you guys don't have any.
Right, so don't I. I have no children either. And just voted in a new school in North Adams.
And I would say this at this point is that, I don't think it's something that we should do this year, and maybe it is next year. But I think that, to Doug's point and to Mike's point, let's talk about it and let's have a plan to at least be closer to know what we're talking about next year.
I mean, Great Barrington hired a private group to come in. They spent $5,000 on a study to review this. I mean, it was brought up at their town
And what
meeting
was the
several
result of
times.
that, Mike?
To not approve it.
Okay,
We
but
can get a copy of that study.
I'd love to get it. Yeah, I think that'd be interesting to read it. Yeah.
I mean, it'd be worth it because this is a
So, I
dramatic
appreciate what
effect.
Patrick's saying, I absolutely do. I
do
think it's
too.
something that we could do if we need to do it.
Yeah.
But I don't think we need to do it now.
I mean, that's the thing is, I think Michael and Tammy, they strive to have a very professional assessor's office, and putting this sort of on a very short timeline might not create the most professional work that they are able to do. And I think out of
We
respect.
would implement it as best we can.
Yeah, no, of course you'll implement it, but the thing is, I just think it should be done in a more thoughtful and a slower pace so that we can be professional at it instead of, because we are, like you said, there's not too many towns that have implemented this, and I think it's not well documented, the procedures by which this must be accomplished. And
Well, I think what we really need to do as well is to, come together and really figure out what constitutes a domicile, because we have so many second homeowners and we have a lot of renters, and, the ADU situation could change that as well. We need to nail down in a community that doesn't have rural delivery, mail delivery, where are we using the voters' rolls? Are we using, we have so many LLCs, we have so many trusts. Looking at a deed when it comes in, when we're, analyzing sales, or if it's just a transfer from one group to another, there is no indication of who is part of that LLC. And if they have a PO box listed for their mail, anybody can get a PO box here. We need to nail down.
According to the post office, you can't get your mail without a PO box.
So we have to figure that out and really think about because we can't present this to the public without having a checklist of whether you are eligible or not. That's our biggest concern right now because we're flying by the seat of our pants.
And I actually wrote a program to handle, when I first looked at this 4 years ago, one of the problems we have is that the method of inputting addresses between the voter rolls and the assessor's rolls are not standardized. BX 329 versus PO Box 329. So it makes it harder for the programs to line up what is one, basically if you have two PO boxes the same, then you can assume that the house, you kind of can see where the logic can get there. And if you're going to take a serious look at this, one of the things I would take the time to do is linearize standardize the way that addresses are actually stored in the two systems. Because in the absence of that, this is a highly manual process. And if you fix that, which I manually did myself on my end, so I could do this analysis, it is a much easier way to get the data that you need than what we have now. I got one other question for you, which is Egremont's vote on Tuesday. They're voting on a proposal that I guess is legal in state law that I hadn't heard of, which is if the landlord set a rent set by the town that is deemed affordable, you can waive the property taxes on that unit. And it's the cheapest, it's way cheaper than building a unit of affordable housing. It's basically a really cheap way for the town. They basically are saying, for costing the town $1,000, $2,000 a year and keeping a unit affordable, it's a whole lot cheaper than building a crap load of affordable housing.
Are they writing that up themselves?
No, it's like some exemption in state law, and I would just once again, we're not doing that this year, but it's an exemption I would like to maybe hear more about, because if we can kind of keep some affordable rentals in town. It's a relatively low cost way to kind of keep them away from I'll earn $15,000,
I can talk to the board in Egremont and see what that was.
They're voting on it
I'm not aware of
on
it.
Tuesday.
And what is it again?
It's basically a way to waive property taxes for units that are deemed affordable for rentals.
I personally haven't heard of that, but I can ask them.
For Tuesday's special town meeting at Egremont. Anyway, that's all I got. So we had a lot of good points though, you guys.
So Michael, did we officially vote or?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we still have all the small commercial.
Okay, no, on that, the second one. Okay.
Okay, so as the last part of the options is the small commercial exemption. Now, last year, the select board voted a 10% on that. And I kind of added a few points. I copied what I did last year, but I added a few little bullet points at the end about what the end result was for something like that. It was minimal. And I apologize because I think I may have not, or maybe misled the select board a bit, because any properties that actually have a property that is not 100% leased, they are not eligible. I think we had a conversation last classification where I think the focus was on, well, if they have a vacancy, then this is the greatest thing for them. Actually, the way the ruling works is if there is a vacancy of any kind, they are no longer eligible for it. So it doesn't really change that much, because the list that we use comes from the unemployment office, because in order to be eligible for this, you have to have 10 people or less, and your valuation on your commercial entity cannot be more than $1 million. So they send us the initial list. I go through it. Tammy and I go through it. And it's not a long list because we don't have that many commercial properties. And I think last year we reported 10 properties that were eligible. When we ended up implementing it, it was 9 altogether. This year, we're proposing, it's even less than that. There are 6 properties that are eligible. So the only way I looked at that is there were a few where the valuations went over the $1 million, took them out.
Don't index it?
What's that?
They don't index it?
They don't give us a valuation.
No, I mean, index the $1 million. That's so dumb. It's like.
No, that's it. That's the rule. 10 people or less, or $1 million. And actually, if it's a mixed use property, the commercial part of that mixed use has to be segregated and taken out, and that can't be more than $1 million. So you can still, if your value was 4 million, but the 3 million of it was, residential, you could still qualify. There's not a lot that we have of that. Again, we have 6 parcels from that list that they provided us. A lot of them are the same from last year. And so the small commercial exemption would have again, this is what I usually mention at the classification hearing, a small impact on the parcels that are eligible, even using the highest 10%. Last year, when we did this, the tax rate, because this is a shift. So you are creating a separate tax rate for the commercial and industrial. The personal property stays the same. This is just commercial industrial. It went from 737, which was certified, to 743. So again, not a big difference. There wasn't a lot of valuation.
6 saved.
What's that?
How much each one of those 6 saved on average?
So, no, actually, I could only use the 9 that we did last year. So the maximum in reduction was 99. Now this is value because it starts at the value side. The maximum reduction in value was 99,950 with a minimum reduction of 38,420. The resulting savings in taxes on the highest reduction, which was the 99,950, was $686, and the lowest was $285. So, I mean, it's something, but it's not, and again, not for anybody that doesn't meet those 2 factors.
This community, do you think that's worth doing? To save something?
I didn't.
I don't think it's worth it. And this sort of goes back to our whole conversation about the residential exemption. I think it was a good thought last year, but it was sort of a knee jerk. And I think
I'll say I was a little shocked.
So
that ride home was not fun for me. I will just admit it.
So I just think, these changes.
Because I didn't know how to implement it to be completely, we're always thinking about, our job in the assessor's office, first and foremost, is to come up with fair and equitable valuations. However, the state of Massachusetts kind of leaves you hanging when it comes to the billing side. It's great that you can get your values set, but there's never an IGR or anything listed on how the hell do you get your values to the tax part of it to send those bills out. And us being a semi-annual community where we're literally up against the gun to not have to borrow money at the end of the year and get a first half bill out. Snags for me are not the best, because Eric and I are constantly, our thought is get that tax rate set as fast as we can. There's a lot of issues with people not getting their tax bills out, not just for the town, but for the taxpayers themselves. No one wants to pay a bill, but when it comes to a tax bill, where you're a semi-annual community, that could be a write-off on your, when you're doing your deductions on your taxes. I do that, but we're quarterly billing in North Adams. So, I was just a little shocked because of these statistics were not there for something like this. And that relates back to the shifting in the tax rates as well. This does create an automatic shift, but it's so low. I mean, it was pennies.
Yeah. I mean, and so again, I think the intent, there was probably good intent there, but the result was not as dramatic for the town.
I mean, I will say we figured out how to implement it.
No, and
Get it on
you did a
there.
great job.
It's on there.
But the bottom line is that going back to, I think the selectman's idea was maybe the, whoever's leasing the property might get a lower rent. But you know what? These things are leased up for 5-10 years.
Yeah, but-
You can't go, you're not going up.
But in our lease has, the property taxes are passed through. So the person renting it really does save. On the commercial leases we have,
Depending on the lease.
it's a lease, I get it. We had empty storefronts and we're trying to kind of make it a little bit easier to get those rented up. That was the
Yeah.
goal.
But again, the empty storefronts
I-
no longer.
Now that we know that it's so 200 or 700 bucks, it's kind of like, okay.
That's why I threw that.
Yeah.
So I would say, I would vote no.
I agree that no on the small commercial exemption.
Right. And Brandy concurred with,
Yes.
our things, but the official vote will just be 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, just to say it for the TV that the assessors have absolutely no say in the selectmen's vote.
No.
And we are just voicing
Recommending.
our opinions
And that's why I'm here today is like, because I just wanted to hear directly what your guys' thoughts are on this issue. So it's,
And it really also comes back to the fact that, when it comes to getting I always want to make it clear to, because we do get the phone calls, where are we with our taxes? And you raised my taxes this much. And I just want to make it clear that, we're all about the valuation. That is our job, to come up with the valuation. We do not set the tax rate. That's your job.
We help set the tax rate, but it's based on spending.
Exactly.
So
It's based on data that is gathered from every department, but it starts at the town meeting. It starts with the raise and appropriate, how much is coming from other available funds. We don't get a huge amount of local aid from the DOR. It's pretty consistent. Our receipts, which is a great thing, are higher than they were the previous year. So,
you guys gotta understand,
know.
this is arcane and complex math. And you've just been instrumental in helping, at least me personally, understand how all this works. I mean, who knew coming into this job, how complicated all this crap is? And I come to these meetings because it's.
5 more years.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
You guys do.
I mean, that's the thing
Thank
is
you.
whatever Michael or the other assessors do, we
Yeah.
are being looked over by the state. So, we have absolutely
Which is,
no control.
for me, at least, a great fail-safe. I've done it for such a long amount of time, but there's always something that will creep up. Someone retires that's not used to, you do get used to working with certain people where okay, we're submitting this, but there might be a question on this. And it's, we do have awesome people here that drop everything they're doing, and we just focus on, we've got to get that tax rate set. We've got to get those bills out. And again, who wants to get a bill in the mail? But tax bills are what keep the community running. It's what services are run from. So it is a very important thing. But however, the interest in how much your tax bill goes up, I always want to relate it back to, well, first and foremost, we will discuss your valuations with you. We'll go through the neighborhoods. We'll go through what tools we had in either increasing, decreasing, or keeping that value the same. But when it comes to the end result, which is the tax bill, if you're going to apply for an abatement, that is everyone's right that owns a property for us to explain it, the valuation side of it, but so much goes into the tax rate side as well.
So Michael, you mentioned that the rate was going to be around maybe potentially $7.09.
We're prepared to submit the recap sheet at 709.
Do we know what the average assessment did?
I don't have that.
Okay.
No.
You said it was 7.
Well, that's the average. That is how much.
Do you know what the average bill will do?
No, but Mike usually runs a spreadsheet, and I know he's got a great statistic, which I don't have with me, but I'm sure he'll have it at the classification hearing, about where we sit as far as average bills. And yeah, so we're not bad.
So, yeah, so again, even the rate's going down 60 cents, but the assessment has gone up as well.
No.
Right. I mean, I always want to make it clear that we are still in a time period, I don't know if it will ever change, where the majority of the deeds that come through, even after the new assessments for fiscal year are in place, because I check every one that comes through. I can't wait to check them when they come through. They're still higher than the new values. And you can, I think you told me a few weeks back that there were, I don't know how many properties that were on the market, and the lowest one was.
Right. There was, I think there was, I don't know, 16 houses in the market in Stockbridge, and there was only one under $1 million, and that was 950. That was the lowest house in Stockbridge.
Yeah.
And I will say when I stress the valuation side of it, we're not working with 100 sales a year. We're working with starting maybe around 40 or 50 by the time we get the ones out that are outliers, and we feel we have a true, sales statistics that we can submit to the DOR. Where we could be around 30 sales that are representing 2,000 properties. It's always been that way. We're never going to have 200 sales a year. We have more transfers from, this to a trust, which involve no money, but we're still in that. I don't even want to call it a cycle, because we've been doing this now for at least 4 years where the valuations have gone up. Thank God we're in a situation where select board and all the other departments and the finance committee are keeping things in check. So we're not having valuations go up and the tax rate go up. That is, I will not mention any communities where that happens, but there are nearby ones where that does occur.
And again, that's all spending. Most
Part,
spending and.
right, when you become an,
We've really done a good job on spending, I think.
yes, there's no doubt about it. And I also think we have this, at least my fellow assessors believe that we're like Beverly Hills Assessor's Office of Berkshire County. And I'm like, that's not true. We're very, very careful on what we're spending and what we're given to spend.
At a recent town managers meeting, one of the town managers lambasted Michael over the fact that we gave, COLA plus a half raises to the town unions. And, it's like, yeah, they'll pay anything to get employees in Stockbridge. Well, we're retaining our employees. And even doing that, our average, increase in the budget has only been like 1.5 points, even with taking care of the town hall employees. I think we've done a good job doing.
I mean, it's amazing to see statistically over the year, our tax rate considerably going down and down and down. I mean, again, you go the other way with valuation, because I don't think we're ever going to be in a situation now where, because of the housing crisis and because of the way the sales are, where we're going to go dipping on those values. I mean, this was not as severe of a total increase as it was the 2 years prior coming off of COVID, but I don't think COVID is an excuse anymore. I mean, we're pretty much, this is what it is for the real estate market. I try to put that as a blurb in our town report. Once again, valuations have gone up, but you could just look at our sales. I mean, and to see the new values that have been adjusted, because I don't believe there was a class of property. When I say class, I mean style, like capes, ranches, that did not go up somewhat for valuation wise. None went down.
Yeah.
Doug, you're in the real estate business. With the 0.5 point cut and the anticipated 0.75 to a point interest rate cut in the next year, what do you think that's going to do to valuations and sales around here?
I think it's going to continue. I mean, so the bottom line is that the sale prices have not decreased. And they haven't decreased primarily because there's just not enough inventory. I think that the prices will probably remain stable to high. I don't think they're going to drop.
I think that the numbers sales may go up with lower rates.
Yeah, but there's just not.
That would be amazing.
There's just not enough stuff to sell.
Yeah.
So that's the thing is I think, so I think the prices are not going to come down, I don't think, but you never know. I mean, one thing I'll say is that the Berkshire County Board of Realtor has a nice flyer that has all of the tax rates across the county here. And with Stockbridge being down around 709, I mean, we are going to be at one of the lowest tax rates in the county for a community that has full services like town sewer, town water, schools. So, I mean, I think the town should be applauded for the tax rate, and the tax rate is only a reflection of the spending. And going back, I think when the town gets put into a corner with huge expenses such as schools and other large expenses, I think that's a time where we start doing drastic things. And I don't think now's the time to.
I hear you.
We do have one participant, and if you wanted to open up a question. And
Yeah, is
comment.
there anybody from the on Zoom that would like to speak?
Okay, Patty.
Patty?
Do you have to let her in?
Oh,
Lisa?
can you hear us?
You're
I
muted.
can, thank you. I just
Okay.
wanted to thank the Board of Assessors for the thoughtful sort of due diligence way that you approach these topics each year. I've watched it from close and from afar, and I want you to know that you're appreciated. Your time and your energy and your approach to these topics is very, very much appreciated by the community. So as one participant who shows up for weird little meetings, thank you. Thank you. I know it
Thanks.
takes
Thank you.
energy, so thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's all we have. I mean, we have to go into executive session.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So you're gonna.
Yes, I should have seen.
Oh,
No, wait, well, we have to do the vote first.
that's right. Sorry.
So, oh, yeah.
Yes, and you got to read.
I got to read it first. So, we need to have a vote to go into executive session per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to discuss and review Chapter 8 of 58 applications for fiscal year 2024, and it's tax bill number 2065. Chair votes yes.
I second.
And then also, we will not come back to the open session after completing our executive session. So I would make a motion to adjourn our open meeting.
Second.
All right.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.